Hey guys, welcome to our next video project. Today we're going to be making our Valentine's decoration love sign. So here's what our finished project looks like, and we're going to go ahead and get started. All you should need to add to your kit is a pair of scissors, and go ahead and set up your little glue gun, okay? So your glue gun, we'll use that to stick on the love and the bow, but that's kind of towards the end. So everything else should be in your little kit. So we'll pull this out. I'm going to set my bow stuff aside. Get out my paint colors with my sponges that go with them. And then I'm gonna set my glue stick with my glue gun. Now, I've got this tiny little piece of sandpaper. So if you notice on your love sign, you might have some really little like kind of splintery things that come off of here. So I'm just gonna kind of go through this, and if I see any little spot that has some little splinters, I'm gonna go ahead and sand that off, okay? That'll just keep that final project looking nice and sharp, all right? This one is actually like cut from real wood, so it's got the real splinters, and it'll actually kind of get you if you don't get all those little pieces off. So I'm just doing quick little back and forth right along all of that edge and knock all of that off, okay? So it'll take just a second. So I've got that one. So I'm gonna set that aside and go ahead and start with my base color on my sign, okay? So we're gonna do the whole sign in white. I really like the darkness on the outside of the sign. So I'm gonna try my best to not get on to the outside edge, this like brown burnt side. That's on there because it's cut with a laser. So I'm just gonna go ahead and dip this and go ahead and get me my coat of white. Like I said, I'm gonna kind of be a little careful around the edge so I don't get any white on the sides. But besides that, I'm just gonna kind of spread this out evenly across here. So this part can be as thick of coverage as you'd like, or as thin. So if you want it thinner, you're gonna get more of that wood grain look through there. And if you want it to be more solid, you might have to do 2 thin coats, okay? So it's always better to do 2 thin coats than it is to do a really thick coat, because it takes longer to dry if you do some really thick coats. But if you just do really thin coats, then you'll have better coverage in the end. So if you could just do one, and then you can kind of see if you like it. And if you don't like it, then you just go back and do another one, okay? So even if I go around that curve, I still kind of try to go back and spread out the white as best I can, like I said, just to get that good coverage on here, okay? So if you have to dip again, just make sure you dip and then wipe off that sponge so you don't have a ton of paint as you're working on here, because this is gonna be covered in black. So it's almost like on the black section, it's almost like a primer. So just kind of making it where everything you're putting on here first is gonna get sucked in, and then it'll get undone by the black, or recovered, I guess, not really undone. All right, so now that I have that white layer on there, so I'm just gonna need this to dry. Okay, so mine is really thin, so you can see kind of a little bit of wood grain through there. Like I said, if you want it to be more solid white, then you're more than welcome to just wait for that to dry and then do that same thing again, do a second coat, okay? Now that I have that, if you wanna wait a little bit for it to dry, I'm gonna kind of go a little bit quicker just to kind of show you. I'm gonna take my little strip of vinyl, so wait for it to dry, and then you're gonna put your vinyl on there, and that's gonna divide where the black and the white is gonna go. So really, I just need a small section on the top that's gonna be the white. So I'm just gonna put this straight across there. And then once I have that on there, so you can kind of see I went about just a little bit over the halfway point up on top. Then I'm gonna take my sponge that still has some white left on it, and I'm gonna seal the stencil. So what that means is I'm just gonna rub some paint right along that bottom edge of the stencil. So you can see it's very thin. I just did this bottom edge. And what that does is that'll help when I go to paint the black, that's gonna seal that so that if anything leaks under it, hopefully it's gonna just leak in white and not leak in black. So that'll help give us that sharp, clean line between the 2 colors. Now, I can set that aside, and I can go ahead and tackle my word love while that dries. So I'm gonna go ahead and get my red. On this one, I just painted the top surface, so I left the wood grain on the sides. If you wanted to paint every side of the word love, you're more than welcome to, but it is gonna take a little bit more time, and it's probably gonna be messy, so you might wanna have gloves if that's what you're gonna do. but that's totally preference. You're more than welcome to. So I always kind of say that you want to just do a really light, coat and then try to spread it as best you can. So I'm doing this bouncing technique, so I'm just a little bouncing that sponge. So I dip and I wipe it off so I can see that sponge texture. And then I kind of just gonna bounce it around in these little circles just to get the coverage that I want. I think if you smear it, if you kind of work like that on this particular sign, you're gonna end up with a lot of red on the side of the letter, and you might not like the way that that looks in the end. So, but again, it's your project, your sign. If you wanna do it that way, you can. And if you wanna paint the whole thing red, you totally can do that, but I would recommend some gloves, all right? So I'm almost done with this, just kind of going around. If you want this to be darker, you can always add a little bit of your black to it. But if not, this is a nice, pure, bright red for Valentine's Day, okay? All right, so I've got that red down, easy peasy. So I'm gonna just pop my lid back on there because I know me and I will spill it everywhere if I mess with that, if I don't close it. So now my word love is done. I'm gonna go ahead and set that aside and let that dry. Let me check on my white. All right, so I think I'm good and dry. So I'm gonna go ahead and apply my black. So kind of the same concept. I'm not gonna do a lot of smearing. I'm gonna dip, I'm gonna wipe. I can see my my sponge texture, and then I'm going to bounce away all my little cares in the world, kind of like the little happy trees from Bob Ross, okay? So we're just gonna bounce away all these this whole bottom area, okay? Now sometimes when you're using this sponge like this, it creates little air bubbles in there, and so you'll notice that. So if you have a lot of air bubbles, it's totally fine, it'll dry flat, but what you might wanna do is when you're done, you'll just go back and check and make sure there's no white showing through, okay? Because sometimes I find that with those little air bubbles, it will actually, they'll pop and then you'll be able to see kind of the background color through it. So sometimes once I'm done painting this, I can go back and just double check and kind of re-bounce those areas a little bit if I need to, okay? So just kind of work my way around. It's not as big of a deal on this one when you go around the edges. It's okay because if you get some of that on the brown, you won't be able to tell. So that's totally fine. Okay, so just kind of working in small areas. This takes a little bit of time. You'll see that if you decided to smudge it on like that versus bouncing, that's fine too. It might give you a kind of a little bit of a different look, and you might actually have to do 2 coats as well. So if you do that, that's totally fine, and that's up to you. You can make it look however you want. I'm just trying to kind of get that solid black, so we have that black and white up against each other, okay? So I'm just gonna keep going till I get all of this covered, okay? And then like I said, I just kind of go back and see, was there anywhere where the bubble popped and it was still showing some white through there? Especially with this being such contrasting colors, with this black and the white, you can really tell if you missed anything. So just be careful to go back and get that coverage. And so as that dries, you'll kind of get a better idea of what it's gonna look like in the end. And so you can always, of course, just go back and do a second layer if you don't like the way that it looks in a minute, okay? So we'll just let that dry. Because I know I'm done with mine, I'm gonna go ahead and peel my vinyl off. If you might do a second coat, then don't peel this vinyl off, okay? So I've got my black and my white circle. Awesome. So let me set that aside, and I'm actually gonna toss this, because that's just trash now. Okay, now we can work on our hanger and our bow, okay? So you have this little piece right here. This is gonna be your hanger. So what I'm actually gonna do is just fold this in half like hot dog style, and then I'm gonna fold it into like a V shape like that, okay? So this is actually what's gonna get glued on the back of the sign to hang it up. So what I'm gonna do is put like a little dot of hot glue. Oh, I say that. Yeah, I'm plugged in. Okay, I just think I'm gonna add another stick. Okay, so just a little dab of glue on both ends, okay? And then I'm gonna push those together. Now, Be careful not to burn yourself. So I'm gonna use my scissors to kind of push those together because this is like a burlap type ribbon. And so it really does, the hot glue will kind of push through if you use too much of it, okay? So now I've got that folded and these pieces are already glued together. So now I can put some hot glue in here. My sign is still wet, so I probably wouldn't do this if your sign is wet, but it's not a big deal. Just a little bit easier to handle once it's dry. But I'm gonna go ahead and just put my, a little bit of glue on the ends of each of this little V part. Can't get it to grab. There we go. All right, so put a little bit of hot glue on each of those. And then you can just set your sign right, I wanna keep it nice and straight, of course. So I'm gonna kind of put it right there and center it and just drop it right on top of that, on that V, okay? So I'm holding it on there. On the granite, it should cool pretty quickly. So I should be able to pick it up. So then you can see, so I just kind of glued that on the back like that, okay? So again, I'm just gonna set that aside because we're waiting for that black to dry. Now that I'm over here in a different angle, I can see lots of black on there. So kind of just moving that around real quick. Sorry. Okay, so I was just touching up that black really quick. Okay, so we're just gonna continue to let that dry and let's work on our bow, okay? You should have a small piece. Let me pop this lid on this white because I'll spill it. Okay, pop that lid on there, get that over, sorry. Okay, so this small piece is actually going to be the part that we're gonna make into your little tails that go on the bottom of the bow. So it should be 4 hearts. So I'm gonna take that and I'm gonna cut it right in half so that I have, so that I have 2 and 2, okay? So on each of these, I'm gonna fold them in half, okay? And then on the bottom, I want my hearts to be showing kind of up and down when I put the tail on. So I'm gonna fold them in half. And then on the bottom, I'm gonna trim off that corner that does not have the wire in it, okay? So I fold it in half and then I cut to a 45-degree angle so that when I open it, it looks like that, okay? So you get that little fancy bow tail. Same thing with my other one. I'm gonna go to the bottom, fold it in half, and then cut at a 45-degree angle, cut off the corner that is not the wire, okay? And you end up with that. So here's my little tails that I'm gonna use. So I'm gonna just set those aside, and now we can start making our bow. So now, with the bow, maybe if I do it, I can actually tell you how many hearts to count, because that might make it a little bit easier. Because what we're trying to do is we're basically making 2 bows, and we're gonna stack them on top of each other and then tie them together. So a little bit of a bigger one, a little bit of a smaller one, and then we're gonna tie it together. Because this is not a ribbon that's the same on the front and the back, we have to be a little bit careful working with it to make sure that the pretty side is always showing, okay? So first thing I'm gonna do is make like a one bigger bow. So kind of just folding it up in on itself like this. Okay, so you can see it's kind of like a little loop like that. And then I'm gonna cut that. So I'm gonna see, I just want it to overlap like 1/2 inch or so. And then I can cut the rest. So once I do that, I can tell you how many hearts I used. So that way it gives you kind of a little bit of a reference for that. Okay, so for my big loop, okay, I used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, okay? So I used 9 hearts. So if you wanna cut a string that is 9 hearts, then you just fold that in on itself, overlap just like 1/2 inch so that you're right in the center and that the 2 loops are equal, okay? So once I have that, I'm just gonna put little dabs of glue on here to hold it all together. Okay, so just put a little bit on there just to keep those pieces from falling apart when I go to put the bow together, okay? So nothing crazy or anything, just little pieces of glue to hold that together. So I'm gonna set those aside. All right, and then next I need to make a little bit of a smaller than that bow. So again, I'm just gonna kind of measure and then I'll tell you how many hearts I use, so that'll kind of help you, okay? So for my last one, I kind of started with a 1/2 bow and I started with a 1/2 heart and ended with a 1/2 heart. So I'm just gonna count those as halves. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 whole hearts and then 2 half hearts. So really it's about 7. So I did about 7 hearts for this second one, okay? So again, just fold it in on itself, put little pieces of glue to just dab it on there, okay? And that way I have this little bow, again, that's like equal on both sides. It's not gonna look perfect because we can finagle that whenever we go to put everything together, and it's wired, so you'll be able to kind of move the bow around a little bit. So that should have left you with like a little piece like this that's like 2 or 3 hearts that are left, and we will use this to tie the bow together, okay? So I'm gonna actually put a little piece of glue to hold those 2 bows together. Ta-da! And then, oops, excuse me. Lastly, I'm gonna fold this little piece in half, this one that I had left over. And I'm gonna start on the back, because this is gonna be, like I said, this is gonna tie the bow together. Now, I don't like to just kind of pull it together because I think it looks a little bit sloppy. So I actually just use my fingers and I kind of fold it where I like it. So you can kind of see real close. I kind of fold it together like that. I think it just looks better that way. And then I take my little piece that's folded in half, and I'm gonna start on the back and I'm gonna wrap it around, okay? So first I'm gonna put a little bit of glue on the back, trying to be careful not to burn myself. In the last video we made, I burnt my thumb really bad, so trying to learn from that. All right, so I'm gonna wrap it around the center, and then when I glue it on the back, just put a little bit of more of hot glue back there to hold it. And if you need to, use your scissors to hold it together, do whatever so that you're not, or just hold it on the counter just so that you're not gonna burn your fingers, okay? So as that's kind of cooling, I can just use my fingers to fluff up these little parts of the ribbon, all right? Looking very cute. So there you go. You can see the little bow. Awesome. Okay, great job. All right, so now my black is still nice and wet. So if you did 2 coats, you might have, your black might be pretty wet, but I'm gonna show you how to put the bow on. Okay, so I have these little tails. So what I ended up doing is just folding the little tail in half. So I'm gonna glue those 2 pieces together with a teeny tiny bit of hot glue. And then, okay baby. I got a little guy watching The Incredibles in the background, so he was telling me that it was over. And then I'm just gonna glue that on here, that little tail. Each one of them kind of opposite of each other. So again, repeat that with this one. Put a tiny little bit of hot glue on each side, and then I'm just gonna glue them kind of together. Maybe hold it down with my scissors. Okay, so get that nice and centered. And then once you have that, put some hot glue on the back of your bow and put that right in the middle of those 2 pieces of ribbon, okay? So I'm gonna hold that as it dries and get that to cool down.
Mommy, why are you talking?
I'm making a video. You wanna come see?
Yeah.
Come here. Look, right there. This is Ezekiel. Say hi.
Hi.
All right, so I'm just kind of holding that on there, and there you go. So you can see how pretty that is right there. So that's gorgeous. So as you can tell, I just folded those little tails in half and I glued those down, and then I put the bow right on top, okay? So the very last step is just to glue on the word love. Now my sign isn't dry all the way, so I'm not gonna glue it on yet. Well, I'm gonna set it on there, but just to kind of show you what it's gonna look like. So whenever you're ready to glue it on, just be careful, because the little part you can see on the finished one, that the little part of the L, the little part of the E, they hang off of this sign. So, yes, baby.
I want a snack.
Okay, can you wait just a second? I'm almost done. So just make sure that all of your glue is kind of like in the center of the word, and then you're gonna set it on here. So I'm just gonna kind of show you what it's gonna look like. So you can see, even though I don't have it glued on there, you can see the finished project is just like that. So my little E is gonna hang off on this side, and my L loop is gonna hang off. So you'll just hot glue that on there once it's totally dry, and you will be good to go. So I hope you had a great time, and I can't wait to see pictures of your finished project. And happy decorating for Valentine's Day. We will see you next month. Thank you.